And speaking of the Gospels, let's start with our reading today. Starting in verse 109, it says this. Jesus said, "The kingdom is like a man who had a hidden treasure in his field without knowing it. And after he died, he left it to his son. The son did not know about the treasure. He inherited the field and sold it. And the one who brought it went plowing and found the treasure. He began to lend money at interest to whomever he wished. Jesus said, 'Whoever finds the world and becomes rich, let him renounce the world.' Jesus said, 'The heavens and the earth will be rolled up in your presence, and the one who lives from the living will not see death.' Does not Jesus say, 'Whoever finds himself is superior to the world?' Jesus said, 'Damn the flesh that depends on the soul. Damn the soul that depends on the flesh.'" Jesus used a word there. His disciples said to him, "When will the kingdom come?" And Jesus said, "It will not come by waiting for it. It will not be a matter of saying, 'Here it is,' or 'There it is.' Rather, the kingdom of heaven is spread out upon the earth, and we do not see it." Simon Peter said to him, this is kind of harsh, "Let Mary leave us, for women are not worthy of life." Yeah, I know, Peter. You check that privilege, Peter. Jesus said, "I myself shall lead her in order to make her male, so that she too may become a living spirit, resembling you males. For every woman who will make herself male will enter the kingdom of heaven." That one makes me cringe to read, but it's how Thomas ends, so we gonna talk about it. So ladies, share your opinions about this verse with one another. Remember our color-coded system. Red is accurate. We don't have anything that is red today. Pink is likely what Jesus said. Gray is inaccurate. But Jesus-y and black text is totally inauthentic text, which we have a couple of those today. Share your observations, and we'll come right back in a moment. I can't wait to hear what you say. BRB. Well, I heard lots of conversation. The question is, who wants to share it? Don't everybody rush to the front. Up, Allie.
What we were kind of saying, the last part, isn't necessarily he's going to turn women into men, literally, but that he's valuing them as the same as men value men.
Just giving them the same opportunities to do the same things that men do. As opposed to literally turning them male, just raising them up to be equal.
Mm-hmm. Creating equality.
Yes.
Good. I like that. Do you have anything else?
Well, about the heaven part, like, it's not going to come to you. It's kind of actually like where you are now. It's what you make of it, and to make it a better space for everyone.
Good.
Journey as opposed to destination.
Journey as opposed to destination. Exactly. Cameron.
So in Jewish culture, the men and the women were separated in the temple. Do you think this is a reference to kind of the Holy of Holies, like life being the sacred place that you can get to, but it was only for men in that culture?
You're on the right track. I don't want to spoil it, but you were definitely looking at my sermon notes this week. So yes, very good observation. Very good. I think Bernie. Yeah.
So I'll limit myself to the last two fragments. At first, talking about the last verse. To me, it has a very strong echo of Aristotle. And Aristotle kind of established this notion of what are women. You know, time this would have been written, the idea that there were eggs and sperm, would not be known for another 1,500 years.
Yep.
And so, women were viewed as this receptacle for the creature that men implanted into them to grow.
The vessel.
And that and women were these kind of failed men, incomplete men that didn't quite make it to the full status of being a male, and were incomplete males, and therefore were women.
Yep.
And this passage seems to have, put on the lips of Jesus this Aristotelian idea. And that because Jesus liked Mary so much, he thought, with a little extra tutelage, I can bring Mary up to male status. But that whole passage makes some sense if you don't know the pre-existing, Greek notions of gender and where gender comes from.
Exactly. Yeah. You are stealing my notes, man. And, I just lost like a page and a half of sermon.
And the passage about the kingdom of heaven being spread out upon earth. That echoes Matthew. Because Matthew, because he was the most Jewish of the Gospels, would never say God. So heaven was really just his way of fill in the blank. I'll say heaven instead.
Yep.
Whereas Luke always used the word God. And this passage parallels, Luke 17. Looking for the kingdom of God is the way Luke talks about it. But it's very pantheistic. What I love about this passage. And it echoes my favorite poet and author of the American West, Edward Abbey, who has a passage that this earth is the only paradise we'll ever know and ever need if we have but eyes to see it. So the idea of renouncing otherworldly heavens and embracing the divine realm that is all around us. Is very much echoed in this passage.
Exactly. There goes another page, man. Kill me. Try to get one step ahead of you. All right, I'll tell you what. I'm going to take one more. Anybody? It's there if you want it. Yes.
I think it's very easy for us to look at this through the 2019 lens and see like patriarchy and all that this awful stuff. But when I think it's happened with Paul too, where we view it as very patriarchal but we're looking at it through our
current lens.
Yeah, and this, if we take it from the context with which it was written, it's actually very progressive for that time to elevate women to the same level as men. And I think that's where we make a mistake if we try to implant our 2019 views on the scripture that was written from a specific context. That was
Exactly. That was an excellent comment from an excellent mustache. I think that's a problem. The Bible has wisdom for us, but it was not written to us. And I think that's very important to remember when you're studying Scripture. So we're going to walk through. I'm going to try to unpack as much as I can what's left. We're going to start right at the beginning. Now here again we see another parable that describes the kingdom of God as a hidden movement. Now last week Bernie brought up an excellent observation in a story about a woman that carried a jar of meal home and she unknowingly spilled this meal along the road. And his point that he made about that story was you may be spreading the kingdom of God down the road and you don't even realize it. And that was kind of the point of the whole sermon last week, right? Like you may be doing heaven's work and you may not even realize it. And this parable has a similar point to make. When you're out there doing the good work of social justice, it's easy to become discouraged when you don't see immediate results. But even though it seems pointless, you never know what kind of residual impact your life is going to make. You never know. Love and justice may not be something that we can tangibly witness, but if we move forward with faithful action, one day it will pay off. But something to remember, the kingdom of hell can manifest in similar fashion, which is why every decision that we make is so important. Now, Logia 110 does not seem to have any grounding in the historical Jesus. It's black text. And I think that's clear because this is a Gnostic thought that's being expressed in Logia 110. Remember that Gnostics believe that creation and the life experience in its entirety, the life experience, everything from fish, the ocean, animals, all of it is evil. And we see this belief system unfold in the next two verses as well. In Logia 1:11, we see the author of Thomas conveying the Gnostic belief that Jesus came to basically tell people to get woke and remember who they are. Now, for the new folks that haven't been here as we walk through Thomas, Gnostics believe that a weaker God made the world and messed it up. And for Gnostics, this theology of creation explained why there are wars, why there's disease, why there's crimes against humanity, and so on and so forth. For Gnostics, the earth is flawed because the maker was flawed. Gnostics believe that the ultimate supreme God created this lesser God. That God created the world, messed it up. So though this world is evil in the minds of Gnostics because it was made by a lesser God, we all possess a tiny divine spark inside of us, because even though our world was made by a flawed God, all things originate from the supreme God, according to Gnostics. And if we just wake up, we can be rejoined with a creator in the next life. Now, as I've read through Thomas, there are a lot of things that I admired about their belief system. A lot. This is not one of them. Gnostics hated creation, to the point that in Logia 1:12, Thomas writes, damn the flesh that depends on the soul, and damn the soul that depends on the flesh. Now, most people in the Jesus Seminar, the folks that collected these verses and informed us as to what is accurate and what is not, they agree that Jesus did not maintain such disdain for creation. And in fact, Jesus would have likely seen the possibility for heaven now in creation, which is what we see in the next Logia of text. In Logia 1:13, we see that Jesus is saying heaven is here and now. It's all around us. We just have to have the capacity to see the possibility for a just society and act accordingly. I believe the message of Jesus is so timely today for this very reason. Y'all, our president literally asked the Department of Defense if he could nuke a hurricane. Like, who on earth would even consider this to be a viable option for disaster relief? You know what we should do? Drop a nuke in it. That's a great idea. Like, if it were not so terrifying, it'd be hysterical. And before that, he claimed that Greenland was for sale. If this was your grandma, you would not even let her have car keys, much less launch codes. Just pointing that out. So it's easy to sink into depression and despair because of our present administration. But these verses, they give me hope, because despite the shit show that we can all clearly see, the possibility for a better tomorrow is still there. Now, Logia 1:14 was interesting, problematic, because here we see what could be misconstrued as a great verse to use against transphobic folks, right? Like, look, it says right here in the Gospel of Thomas that gender doesn't matter. We can all be made equal. Hashtag mic drop. Boom. Well, this verse is more nuanced than that, as a couple people pointed out. By ancient standards, this was an incredibly progressive statement. By modern standards, it's pretty effed up. Like Joe Biden in the 80s making commentary effed up. Like we would have to have a PR campaign about this. Somebody would have found it. It's bad. But understand this, Thomasine Christian doctrine did not agree at all with Petrine Christian doctrine. So you got Thomas, followers of Thomas's teachings, and followers of Peter. And one of the characteristics of Petrine Christianity, meaning those that followed the assumed teachings of Peter, was that they were extremely misogynistic. Now, Thomasine Christians, and we see that, right? Like you see that in that opening verse where Peter is just saying some really sexist things. Now, Thomasine Christians were Gnostics, and though some of them were misogynistic as well, most were attempting to be egalitarians and believed in equality-ish back then. Now, even though the end goal of the Gnostics was equality, it's still problematic with a modern lens, because they still believed that women were created inferior to men. They believed that women could take off their inferior womanhood and become equal to men, and they likely used some kind of ritual that women would go through to show that they were taking off the spirit of a woman in order to become the spirit of a man, to be treated equally in that society. Again, for that time and in that culture, it was extremely progressive, but by today's standards, it's incredibly problematic. And it absolutely should be viewed as problematic. And this is why it's important for churches to declare that men and women are created equal, because sexism is something the church has been battling since the beginning, and it's long overdue to be removed from our Christian doctrine. The moment we exit the womb, and well after we are in the tomb, we were all created equal in the eyes of our Creator. It's also why we should not use the exact praxis of ancient folks to define present-day legislation. It's a bad idea. They didn't understand science the way we do. They didn't understand justice the way we do. We can pull some wisdom from it, but we just shouldn't say, let's base our laws on what these people 1,500 years ago believed. That's a good idea. No, that's stupid. That's bad theology. Don't do that. Now, in that knowledge, it's time for application. Discuss that amongst your groups, and we'll come back and share those thoughts collectively in just a moment. All right. Hate to interrupt, but I would love to hear what you discussed. Who wants to share? Anybody? Going once? Bernie.
But going back to, verse 114, I think the other thing that is on display is, the school of, after the crucifixion, the schools of the Jesus movements, which immediately started fragmenting into a variety of Jesus movements. Two of the main ones are the ones, based in Peter and his misogyny. But we also know, in Jesus' seminar, we agree that Mary Magdalene was this woman who was much respected by Jesus, had been a patron of the Jesus movement, kind of made the whole movement possible through her own.
Yeah, she funded it.
And so there was a Mary-based movement immediately as well. And the competition between the misogynistic, woman-hating Petrine school and the Mary Magdalene, early feminist wing of Christianity school is on display in this.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it's interesting to see how the Southern Baptist Convention is continues to pass resolutions to affirm that Peter's right.
Yep.
Women are inferior. They need to understand their secondary role. And Jimmy Carter left the Southern Baptist Convention over this, and they just reaffirmed, if I'm remembering, just like a couple of years ago.
Yep, they did. They lost it, I think, in the 90s. I used to be Southern Baptist. They lost some ground there. And then they rewrote the Baptist Faith and Message, I think in like 2006 or 7, maybe 8. And then they voted on it, I think, early 2010s. And they've definitely taken a gigantic leap backwards. The Southern Baptist Church didn't used to be this extreme until the moral majority in the 80s. And that was definitely a political strategy there. But yeah, they're definitely trying to point these misogynistic verses. They wouldn't use Thomas, because of course that's heretical to a Baptist. But they would point to a sexist verse and see God made us differently. And as scary as that thought is for some of the ladies here, there are a few churches in town that affirm that every week. Some just put it right up on their website. We believe that women are inferior to men. They say it nicely, but that's what they believe. It's awful. 2019 in Santa Cruz. Yeah? What's that?
How do you say it nicely?
I don't think you do. I think they try to say it nicely.
Inferior, they just say it.
No, I think they say that they're different, but men are in charge. Men are the head of the church, the head of the family. They use very soft, sexist language.
Complementary.
Yeah, compliment. Yeah, that's what they call it. It's not a compliment. I don't know why they call it that. Like, none of it's a compliment.
Well, the Catholic Church really has done that for
Oh yeah.
well, that's true.
This is true. It's nothing new. It's been obviously since the beginning. And one of the things that I assumed was that the early church was this unified movement. And the more you dig into it, the more you find out that's not true. They were just as divided as we are today on theology. And I think it's good that we're divided on some things. I don't think we should be unified with sexism, personally. I don't think we should be unified with homophobia. If we're divided on that, good. So, we stand on the side of justice. That's how we roll. This last verse stood out to me, personally, for multiple reasons. Mostly because even though the concept of equality is potentially present, right? In this verse, there is still a belief system under the surface that's incredibly problematic for women. And we have to acknowledge that some of these things are in the Bible and that they were progressive then, they're still troublesome to read now. I mean, how often does that happen in our life though? Like, how often do we encounter folks that have mostly good ideas and mostly good values and views, and then out of nowhere, right, we discover that they maintain incredibly problematic cultural values as well. Like, you're just in the kitchen with your dear sweet grandma, you're making some cupcakes or some cookies, and out of nowhere, somebody brings up a Democrat and she just says some racist shit, and you're like, what just happened? Let's get back to the cookies. Like, that, I'm sure that's happened to more people than just me, right? Like, how often do we encounter folks like that? And immediately, most of you probably thought about a conservative family member or conservative friends, but it's not just conservative Republicans, y'all. It's easy with Trump constantly keeping us on red alert, like literal nuclear red alert for a hurricane. It's easy for us on the left to forget that our side of the political aisle is far from perfect. Now this week, a local liberal lady, I'm not going to say who, but went on Facebook, and I happened to catch this conversation, and shared an extremely transphobic post. And she started going off on how her opinion was that trans women are just men who have surgery and alter their bodies because they have an agenda to invade and take over women's spaces. Needless to say, I was shocked and disgusted. I agree with this person on 99% of everything else, but she's saying some incredibly hateful things. And multiple women tried to talk her down from her position, but she refused to listen. So being that she and I are both white people, I decided to say something to her, because white silence is violence. And I said, look, your views, they're not only bigoted, they're dangerous. I have to unfollow your post, and I've got to unfriend you on Facebook. And this makes me sad, because you and I agree about 99% of everything else in society, but your rhetoric regarding trans women is deeply offensive. I cannot maintain friendship with a person that is this bigoted, especially when the average life expectancy of trans women is in their 30s. And it's even less if they're trans women of color. She immediately played the victim card about how I had wronged her for calling her views bigoted. And she also did something that I'm quite sick of regarding white women in Santa Cruz. Ladies, please let me finish. But I am sick of this. She dropped the misogyny card. First off, let me acknowledge that misogyny and sexism, like it was hundreds of years ago, is still a major problem today. Both are harmful. And I'm not saying this rant that I'm about to convey before you to take women to task, to talk down to women. I'm saying this as a straight, white, cisgendered person holding other straight, white, cisgendered people to account. All right? If you're still concerned, know that my wife is a radical, politically progressive feminist, and she's also a nurse that knows how to kill me in my sleep and get away with it if I were to say anything that was effed up. So rest assured that I'm not saying this as a woman hater, and if I was, Allie will handle it. But still, let me preface this rant with this. I want you to understand this. I will never know a woman's pain, ever. I acknowledge that society gives me a great deal of privilege, more than any other group in the U.S. as a straight white person, as a straight white man. And it's something I'm trying to change, but it's also something that I'm well aware still, unfortunately, exists. However, there seems to be widespread misunderstanding in Santa Cruz that needs to be addressed regarding feminism. Because on the pole of privilege, just below straight, white, cis men, do you know who has the silver medal of privilege in this country? Straight, white, cis women. All right? They fought hard for it, and I don't want to take away from the suffrage movement, but straight, white women still have far more privilege than any straight man of color in this country. Full stop. If you not believe me at all, look at our prison system, our unemployment rates, compare wages to people of color versus white women. This is why I had to address this individual, because I'm honestly fed up with straight white people saying racist things toward people of color and intolerant things toward LGBT people and Muslims. And then when they're called out for their bigotry, they try to play victim. There has to be accountability for all straight white folks. A minister friend of mine he's a person of color with similar issues in his church said to me one day, and I think he stole this from a comedian, but I can't think of which one. He said, white women were in on the heist, they just didn't like the cut. You know, trans exclusionary radical feminist and white feminism that's exclusively focused on dealing with issues for white women, they're massive issues in this country, and they're both very easy to spot in Santa Cruz. And it needs to be called out by other people of privilege, especially ladies, not me, especially ladies. You need to be calling this out. Because according to some of the amazing activist ladies I follow online, if feminism is not intersectional, then it's not true feminism. Full stop. Just like if Christianity is not fighting for justice and equality, it's not authentic Christianity. Full stop. If I hold the church to task and everybody celebrates that, I gotta hold other white folks to task too. So don't get mad. But this week was a wake-up call for me because it's so easy to forget about the skeletons in the closet on the political left, right? Yes, Donald Trump is one of the worst things that happened to this country. Yes, the GOP is turning into a mob of extremists. Well, they've always been that way, but it's becoming more apparent now. Yes, conservative evangelicals have elected both groups, and they're the antithesis of the message of Jesus. But what about us? On the left, are we not able to be introspective? Are we not able to hold each other accountable? Should we not uphold the values that we desire and that we demand to see in society? Y'all, if we expect things to change, but we're not willing to change ourselves, then I hate to tell you this, but that's not how progress works. That's why, even if we agree with 90% of everything else on the political spectrum, with folks that we love and that we care about, we have to start calling out bigotry on the left lovingly, firmly, and loudly, especially in our own communities. We must be the change we expect society to adopt, because transformation does not begin out there. It begins in here. In that knowledge, I believe that's part of communion. Communion represents so much, right? It's an invitation to participate in the resistance. It's a statement of inclusion, but it's also something that we need to do to realize that we helped create this brokenness, and we're taking responsibility in fixing ourselves as well as society. And until next week, may the peace of the Lord Christ go with you wherever it may send you. May it guide you through the wilderness and protect you through the storms. May it bring you home rejoicing at the wonders that it shows you. And may it bring you home rejoicing once again into our doors. Grace and peace to you.